has to happen in the first 5 minutes, basically. Usually.
Ready. Thanks.
John, did we decide if the resolution was going to be read or not?
Apparently it's at our discretion. Do you have a preference?
Ned, as my co-author in crime, what do you think? Should we
Why not read it? I think you should read it. I think that it's a strong statement, and it's given the incredible mobs of people who watch these things, hopefully it'll reach somebody more by being read out than just by being written.
All right.
I think there's a plan. Well, at 7 o'clock, let me call the meeting to order. And of course, the first thing, the first thing I'd like to do is welcome Tom Frazier to the commission. And I've asked Tom to just give us a little background on himself. I've had the pleasure of running into him a couple of times at Green Communities meetings, which he's been very active in, representing the Michigan Township Association. Tom?
Sure. Thank you, John. And again, Tom Frazier, and I'm happy to be selected to be on the commission. I appreciate everybody's support from the commission for nominating me to the township board. And I certainly appreciate the board's approval of me at their last meeting. So look forward to getting my feet wet, so to speak, and diving in. But just a little bit on background. I do work for the Michigan Townships Association. I've been there for quite a long time, about 19 years now, and I'm a legislative liaison. I handle specifically one of my areas that I handle for MTA is environmental legislation. So that's always been a keen interest of mine. And as you indicated, I am MTA's representative to the Michigan Green Communities Network, which includes the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, which Meridian Township has participated in the last few years, and pleased to present there's the certificate, I believe about a year ago, for your efforts in that regard. So I've been a resident of Meridian Township for about 25 years. My wife and I live in the township. She's actually lived here longer than I, but I did grow up in the area. So again, look forward to being a part of the commission, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, of course, the first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to propose any additions or changes? Okay, I'd like to see a motion to approve the agenda.
Hello.
Okay, second. Okay.
Second. Yeah.
I guess, to voting, we're just going to raise hands, I believe. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Any opposed? Okay, moving on. The minutes is our next item on the agenda. Does anybody want to suggest any changes to our minutes from our last meeting?
There were a couple of very minor typos. Should I actually directly point them out? Might as well.
Go ahead.
On under the work group reports, it's under the Land Preservation Board, line 3. It says there are openings on the LPB. You see that? And
advisory board.
What's that?
Okay, is that it, Ned?
Yeah, and there was one other. Where is it now? Under public remarks on the next page, it says Stephen, how do we say it? Gebbis? Forward a couple calls, Connie Rabani, and then it says parentheses, home TV intern. It just needs a close parenthesis.
With those minor changes, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So move.
Second.
Second? Okay, raise your hand if you want to approve the minutes. Okay, any opposed? Okay,
What sign
we're,
would I make if I were opposed?
what's that?
What sign would I make if I were opposed?
Oh.
There are other hand signals.
Yeah, good question. Well, you gotta be, when I say any opposed, you gotta raise your hand quick.
Okay.
I'll go slower for other issues. Okay, we're up to public remarks. I believe John wanted to say a couple words.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say, first of all, that I'm John Esser. I live at 5448 Okemos Road. Actually have lived here now with my fiance for 33 years. I'm running for a trustee position on the township board. And I wanted to pass along some to the commission that the environmental concerns that you discuss and that you make important recommendations on are really important to my campaign and what I feel the township needs to be paying attention to, more attention than we have in the past. I want to say that I think Meridian Township is doing a good job with environmental issues that come up. I think there's a good foundation for what is happening in the township. But I am concerned that given the scientific facts and the projections about our environmental conditions, even now, and certainly on into the future, I don't know that we're doing as much as we need to. I think we can do more with the assets that we have, with the fine advice we get from your commission and other commissions. I've been sitting in on a number of these, but I think we can and we must do more considering these scientific facts and projections. The other thing too that comes to mind when, I spent a lot of time thinking about what are important things here concerning the township. And when I look at the township let's see, how would you say, the way the township is presented, it's as a prime community. And given that way of presenting ourselves to the outside world, it suggests to me that we need to set an example in what we do environmentally, set an example for other communities in the area concerning environmental sustainability. I think we can do more. I honestly think we must be doing more. And if I was fortunate enough to be successful in my run for this trustee position, I would work to promote the environmental concerns of your commission as best I can. And if I can say this, I would also pass along that my website is John Esser for Meridian. It's all one word, all one long word. John Esser for Meridian Town Trustee, John Esser for MeridianTrustee.com, or my Facebook page, John Esser for Meridian Trustee. And there is additional information about other concerns that I have for the township. And thank you very much for listening to my ramblings for a couple of minutes here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a public comment? Okay, moving on to the new business. We have a,
We had one.
I believe
Phil.
Treasurer DeShane would like to make a comment, sir.
oh, go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. Just like to say to the Environmental Commission that I know Leroy will give a full report in a few minutes, but the tree subcommittee did meet, and there's some great activity going to go on this fall in the township with that $10,000 grant from the board to the commission. And it looks like that the $10,000 will go towards purchasing up 1,000 trees or more. And thought now is how to involve schools, how to involve the community more in the distribution and the planting and the success of those trees being planted. So I'm excited by the energy that the tree committee has shown and the environmental commission as a whole towards this project. As you remember, the township board allowed that $10,000 grant to the commission to do something this year. And what I said to the tree committee is that it's important to make something tangible happen this fall so that there's a good report to go back to the board later in the year. Because I would, for one, would like to see the board make this environmental commission grants an annual thing. There's lots of innovative things that can be done with the environment. We can do more. We did, as you know, put $100,000 into solar this year, and then the $10,000 additional grant. Community supports environmental activities, as you all know, as this commission represents, and we're excited about this first ever project and see how far we can take it this fall. So just want to give a quick update there, and the board is looking forward to hearing back from the environmental commission, and I'm looking forward to doing my part to help the tree committee to take this $10,000 and allow us to plant as many trees as possible this fall. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Any other public comments? Okay, moving on to the new business. We have a new commissioner application, and I'm just thrilled, as probably a lot of you are, to see another student application coming in. I know it's challenging always to get student participation, but it's so important. And I don't know, does anybody have any comments or thoughts on the application?
I wanted to say the timing is really good because some of you saw Aparna Krishnamurti's message. She's off to college fairly soon and has to leave the commission. So appreciate the interest. And Courtney, is there anything you wanted to say?
No, I would just say that you know, environmental science has been my passion since I was in high school, and my kids certainly have seen my advocacy, but Luca's taken his own pathway, and he has his own mind, and he has his own ideas, and this was his decision. It wasn't mine, and he came to me with it prior to me even being on board liaison for the commission. So he works on the Earth Club when school's in session. He worked with Aparna, and he's really got a lot of passion, but I want to stay as a board liaison and not necessarily a parent, but this is a passion of his own as well.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, one comment. Courtney, I wasn't sure as I was looking his information over, I saw an extra N in his name on what I was reading. It is the same last name spelling as yours?
It is the last name spelling, and maybe I should have looked over his his resume a little
No.
I was trying to pronounce Wisniewski.
We get all kinds. We don't mind. But thank you for bringing that up.
With Kilbasso too, so.
Right. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I'll make sure he
I don't know what we saw it in, but it was something today.
Okay. Thank you.
It's actually on the agenda. It's not in his material. It's on the agenda where there's an extra N.
Well,
He
then
knew how to spell his name.
That makes perfect sense. It's really hard to spell until you get used to it.
Blame Leroy.
You're saying
it's okay, Leroy.
He can't spell his own name.
And so I'm thinking that we should, like we've done before, send an email to Mr. Stika indicating our support for the application. Does anybody have, what does everybody think about that?
I think we should authorize the chair to contact the township supervisor and recommend this appointment.
I agree.
All in favor, kind of raise your hand, please. Okay, Does anybody have any concern about that or is against it? Okay. Okay, moving on. Let's see, mowing amendment discussion. This was a request from Patricia Jackson for some feedback. Leroy, could you give us a little background on this?
Yeah, Pat Jackson at our last meeting asked if we, or after our presentation to the board, asked if we had any feedback on this kind of expanded mowing ordinance, which basically requires mowing 75 feet from a sidewalk. If there's no sidewalk, it's not a it's not a requirement. But the current ordinance requires 75 feet from a structure. I think it's the sense that there are some people who are just mowing that 75 feet from the structure, and that there are some unsightly mowing going on. Anyway, I couldn't help but notice the April issue of Zoning Practice had a nice section on native landscaping, and I shared that with you. John pointed out after reading the actual amendment that there's a fair amount of leeway in that gardens, trees, I'm looking for the section here.
Wildflowers, you know.
Wildflowers are exceptions. Yep. But I was talking with Emma briefly, and I'd asked for some guidance from Wild Type Plant Nursery as well, who helped us out with the rain garden. If there might be maybe another word or two thrown in there about some of the exceptions, such as Emma mentioned bioswale. If it's an intentionally designed piece of green infrastructure or a rain garden, for example, we might want to add that. This is fairly far along in the process, so I'm not sure how much our recommendations will be able to be included, but just throwing it out there for discussion. And of course, Pat Jackson would like our take on this.
Bill?
Yeah, I think this is great, and I like the direction it's going. One simple fix to incorporate the what we call green infrastructure might be to take the next to last sentence and insert something there. Nothing in this section shall apply to trees, flower gardens, vegetation planted for ornamental or environmental purposes, or for stormwater management purposes, or for, you know, if we could just augment those purposes, that would, I think, capture a lot of the stuff that we're talking about.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is this a time to do, given the situation with COVID, given the economic situation, given the challenges that many people are experiencing right now, is this the time to worry about whether or not lawn is mowed 75 feet from a sidewalk? What about corner lots? Is this what is this where, you know, is this the hill we're willing to die on? I'm not.
I'm not sure there's going to be much pushback on it. And from the standpoint of taking an opportunity to make a step forward in exempting things that we want people to be doing that are otherwise prevented by an ordinance that is overly restrictive.
I mean, I agree with, what is the purpose of change? I guess really my question is, what is the purpose of changing that first part from structure to the side and adding the sidewalk? I fully agree with making the rest of it less prescriptive, allowing options. I strongly believe that we should be allowing people to put in butterfly gardens or,
yeah,
you know, but what's the reason for that 75 feet of the sidewalk?
Go ahead, Bill.
My understanding is the 75 feet is some arbitrary distance that someone decided would keep rodents from your house.
Oh.
Right, you want to keep the yard mowed 75 feet away so you don't get rats infesting a building. And I don't know where the 75 number came from, but that's the number that's there. I'm guessing that the business about the sidewalks is that right now the township can't cite someone for an ordinance violation until the vegetation covers the sidewalk. And if you back that vegetation up, so it has to be cleared that much from the sidewalk, then they don't have to wait until a violation is actually stopping people from walking down the sidewalk before they can get it cleared. And in a time when we want people to be out walking about and they can't because they can't maintain distancing because the vegetation is growing up against the sidewalk, doesn't seem like a bad thing.
Well, that seems, that's a good explanation, Bill. And, you know, my first reaction was 75 feet seemed like a lot of feet or something like this, because another, I think, rationale is, you know, in certain situations, it could be kind of block you looking at traffic coming and that sort of thing from a side road or whatever. So there could be some, I guess, reasons for this new ordinance, but it did seem like 75 feet was more than would be required for the sorts of things like, Bill, you were talking about.
Lot isn't even 75 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Part of the issue is that there's a lot of momentum behind this already. And it's like, we don't want to necessarily, well, maybe we do, but I mean, this is likely to be passed fairly soon. And it's been underway for a while. We have other kind of fish to fry, so to speak. I would say if we could come up with some language that that might fly and that easy to include, we'd be more likely to get what we want and then be asked for comment in the future. If we slow things way down, it actually might undermine our future efforts. That's my 2 cents.
Well, Leroy, one way to handle this is we could, and I like the ideas of kind of being more clear about what is permitted, and I think that could be a helpful recommendation on our part. I guess from my perspective, it wouldn't do any, why not in the, because we're sending we're making a response to Pat Jackson, right? I guess it wouldn't hurt for us to just kind of say in the process of discussing this, some concerns were raised about whether it's really needed at this time and whether 75 feet was really necessary, and just kind of indicate those points came up and not really necessarily make any recommendation beyond expanding what would be considered.
I could share with you the summary of the code enforcement complaints. It's, you know, one of the bigger categories in the summertime.
Really? Okay.
And you're right that when it entails someone mowing their yard, that's typically an individual submitting a complaint. There are instances where township staff will cruise a neighborhood and look to see, do you have your house numbers displayed properly? Do you have the sidewalks clear? And at that point, they may issue a whole number of citations as part of a sort of campaign. So it varies. There have been times when the township has been more proactive at especially keeping the sidewalk.
What's your sense though of numbers? I mean, are you talking about, 500 a year or 50 a year or 15 a year? I'm just curious about what the, sort of balance of activity that this particular ordinance gets. Courtney.
Courtney?
Hi, John. I could maybe give some context on this subject if that's helpful.
Yeah.
So in our last board meeting, we had quite a bit of discussion, and the impetus is that there is related to certainly complaints, but these are coming from complaints of blighted areas, not necessarily residential. So I think Ned, you said, I don't have 75 feet of yard, neither do I. So quite honestly, it's more towards some of our blighted, more commercial areas. So it does seem like I hear your discussion. It certainly makes sense, but the idea isn't, the intent isn't for our residential areas so much. But there is momentum behind this, but I wouldn't, I certainly would support your addition to some of the language. So I don't think that's been thought about with, or, considered with the rain gardens or some of these other natural environments that aren't grass. And I think that there is opportunity for the language to be updated accordingly. So, John, I think, like you said, if we could put something together in writing, I could certainly, take it to the board as such. I don't know if that's helpful.
Susan?
Given that, walking in some of those areas, in my mind, the biggest concern isn't so much the weeds and grass, it's all the garbage. And there's nothing in here that talks about the amount of trash that's on those, I'll call it blighted areas, that are left there for most likely years and years. So, I mean, if we're going to address, if that's the concern, I mean, my concern isn't private. There was, especially in the early part of COVID, there were a lot of properties that weren't getting mowed. And my guess is a lot of that was due to the challenges, the stress of everything of COVID. I don't think it's the right time to add additional stress to people. On the other hand, if you're talking about some of these other areas, there's significant, in my mind, concern. And I debate, should I try to get the Scout troop out to try and clean it up? And that's part of me is going like, wait a second, I'll do it on township property, but why? This is commercial property. And if we're going to look at an ordinance, do we want to look at it comprehensively and not just weeds, grass, brush, and other vegetation, but maintaining, it's a hygiene and sanitation issue.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if there is an ordinance that covers that. What is included, I don't have a clue, of course. Leroy, you probably don't have any sense of that, do you?
No, but I will remind us that this is on the agenda, an environmental review of our code of ordinances and
right.
procedures. So there's nothing stopping us from doing a more thorough review and bringing up some of these concerns that Susan is articulating.
Good point. Yeah, we do that. Let's move along if that's acceptable to anybody. Does anybody have a last comment? Because what I'll ask to do is, Leroy, could you put together a draft, a note to Pat Jackson related to our suggestions, and also just kind of expressing some of the issues and concerns that were raised. And obviously, well, we're all going to get copies of that. So that will also kind of probably be helpful to Courtney to kind of express our suggestions to the board when the issue comes up again. Any final thoughts on this?
I have a question, if I'm able to say something. I don't know.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure I'm totally clear. So it's 75 feet, but the exceptions are already established gardens, vegetation of that sort. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Let's see here.
I can read it. I have it.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'll share that with you, Emma, and maybe, since Emma is our naturalist, maybe she can help with the wordsmithing a little bit, if that's okay with y'all.
Absolutely.
I'll share the current language with you, Emma, and
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
and then run a draft by everybody. And if there's something else you think of after the meeting that you want us to consider in that memo, or once you get the draft, feel free to chime in.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That would be great.
Thank you, Leroy. Okay, next on the agenda, environmental justice resolution. Susan and Ned, you're up.
Okay, let me pull this up and make sure I've got the right one. Okay. We had been talking about issues of environmental justice, and with all that's happening around us, several of us thought it was the time that we really should make a resolution regarding racism and declaring it a public health crisis in the Charter Township of Meridian. So I've been asked to read this. So whereas the Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian recognizes that the scourge of racism operating on a systemic, institutional, and interpersonal levels through time and generations has led to a public health crisis calling for urgent attention and action. And whereas across the United States, race is the most significant predictor, more than socioeconomic status, of a person living near contaminated air, water, or soil, this environmental imbalance creates and amplifies racial and social disparities across key indicators of success, including health, educational, criminal justice, and economic security. And whereas the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws and regulations and policies. Whereas the race-specific prevalence rate of COVID-19 for Asians and Black residents of Ingham County is more than 3 times that for white residents. And whereas despite the increasing racial diversity in the U.S., the percentage of people of color in environmental organizations, foundations, and government agencies is approximately half that in the technology sector. And whereas the Environmental Commission seeks proactive, transformational environmental solutions that connect to and create economic and education opportunities and redress past systemic injustice so that all communities can thrive. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian declares racism to be a public health crisis that demands attention, action from all levels of government and ranks of civil society. Be it further resolved that this Environmental Commission dedicates itself to honest and open debate, discussion, and analysis of racial inequities in considering the effects of our recommendations for actions in our community, and be it further resolved that this Environmental Commission recommends that the Township Board and all township departments work with residents, especially those of color, to collect data on racial disparities in staffing, procurement, contracting, representation on township boards and commissions, and in receipt of government intervention and benefits. Review revised policies and procedures with the goal of eradicating bias and ensuring equity, and identify and implement policies and practices that intentionally eliminate racial disparities and foster a more equitable community.
Thank you. Do I have a second to adopt the resolution? Okay, Rose, discussion? Oh, go ahead, Courtney.
Susan, that was well written. I don't know if you know, on our just previous board meeting that we did join Ingham County to declare racism as a public health crisis in Meridian. So I think this is fantastic that the Environmental Commission is also pursuing this from an environmental justice perspective as well, because that's something I helped draft that, and that's not something that was very articulated well within necessarily our resolution. But I'm also working with Trustee Opsimer and Jackson to put on for discussion on our next board meeting next Tuesday, a discussion to develop and implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan for Meridian. And so our declaration is there. We've supported Ingham County. The Environmental Commission would be supporting us, but looking for some of those tangible, what do we do next? How do we do this? So just wanted to throw that out there because part of that diversity, equity, and inclusion plan would require a committee or a task force that would work to develop this plan that's gonna, take several years to develop. So it's something that I'm throwing out there to the commission, might be something that we can coordinate on because we clearly have very similar objectives. So that'll come up on our next board meeting, and I can make sure you all have a copy of that, the discussion in the notes as well. And if you want to join the board for public discussion, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you, Ned, for helping with all the writing of it.
I'll note too that there was a discussion with Regina Strong, who's the environmental justice advocate for the state of Michigan, which a number of us participated in, and I thought it was very helpful because she was giving us some ideas specifically related to kind of the environmental justice and what we should kind of consider going forward. A big part of it, I think, is just being sensitive to the issues and kind of, as we make various decisions, kind of keep it in mind. Other discussion before we vote on the resolution?
Can I just ask a question? I mean, one of the classic problems, I think in more in urban areas really, but is the so-called downzoning of different community areas. And I was just wondering if anybody is aware of any examples of that in Meridian Township itself. Just, you have a bunch of people here who know things about the township, so I'm just curious.
I mean,
I think, Bill, did you want to say something? Oh. Okay, any other further discussion? Okay, Bill?
Bill does have his hand up here.
Yeah, I thought I heard somebody else wanted to chime in, so I was going to wait. The only suggestion I had was potentially, and it's not really necessary at this point, but to add whereases because I like more whereases. And I'm just reading from the introduction of the Environmental Commission on the Township website. The Environmental Commission advises township policy to boards and staff on issues related to environmental protection, pollution prevention, and the preservation of natural areas. This is a further justification for why we're waiting in on this issue. It's take it or leave it. I'm not going to be upset if it doesn't get included. That's just a suggestion.
Oh, add it as a whereas?
Yes.
Bill, if you can just send me kind of what you're thinking and I can add it.
Sounds like a friendly amendment. Are we ready to vote on the resolution? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay. All opposed? Okay. Okay, let's see. Regional environmental Zoom meeting. I had suggested to, well, our climate sustainability plan does include language about us with respect to regional cooperation. And since everybody in the world is Zooming these days, I had suggested to Leroy that maybe we host a Zoom meeting for local governments in the region to kind of share what they're doing related to environmental actions and issues. My thinking was to invite Williamston Township and Delhi and Delta, East Lansing and Lansing, and give everybody about 10 minutes to kind of share what they've been doing, and then spend about 30 minutes just asking questions and discussion, just to kind of keep the dialogue going and also maybe get some good ideas. So that's just an idea. Appreciate any thoughts or feedback on that. Okay. Rose, go ahead.
I was just giving you the thumbs up. I think that's a good
Oh,
idea.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on anything, but I didn't hear any concerns raised. So, Leroy, why don't you put it on your to-do list?
Okay, do we want to have that as one of our regular meetings, or as the first part, like a 6 to 7 ish? Or do we want to have a separate day for that?
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, because most of the participants will probably be township or city employees, that it's better to do it during the working, business hours. But whatever you think.
Well, also, if they're coming from other communities as well, I'm sure there's got to be some negotiation about what days work.
Right. We'll leave it up to you, Leroy, to kind of figure out a time and date that's good for everybody. Scheduling will be challenging, and needless to say, we'll invite other local governments from the area and everybody on this in commission, and so it'd be open to anybody interested. So we'll kind of work on that, see what we can do. Anything else under new business? Anything else we want to talk about? Okay. Old business. Leroy, do you want to bring us up to date on the environmental review of Code of Ordinances?
Well, I was hoping to have give folks the opportunity to weigh in on how we might proceed with this, because we've obviously, there's many ways that this can go, from a simple level of doing what we're just doing with this 75-foot issue, grass, to a full-blown review of our Code of Ordinances. I was talking with Derek about this today, and one of the pieces of this is the green infrastructure audit that Tri-County Regional Planning Commission and Mid-Michigan Environmental Action Council have offered to help us with, and have recently helped Lansing with. So that might be a good starting point. That involves not just the Code of Ordinances, but policies and procedures, looking at wetlands and that type of thing. But some of you know a lot more about this than I do, so I wanted to just spend some time at this meeting getting your input. And I'm also delighted that Tom, who works with the Green Communities Initiative and is connected to our larger network of townships around the state, might have some experience on how communities have done this successfully, and what other communities might be models for certain codes or ordinances or policies that we might consider and recommend. I'd also like to just express the issue that we could come up with a great recommendations, but if other commissions and staff are not involved with this process, they are not necessarily likely to implement or buy into it. So the more we can make this inclusive of those specifically, especially those that are enforcing or enforcing, I think it'd be much more of a chance of success versus even a well thought out document that we can come up with. So those are just a few ideas to share.
Thoughts? Well, Leroy, it does seem like it would be helpful. I'm not sure exactly how this can be done to kind of prioritize the areas that we look at. And I guess one thing we could do is just, you know, ask the planning department if they have any suggestions on which ordinances might be most useful for us to kind of take a look at or do some sort of review. Now, again, I'm assuming though that the infrastructure audit, the green infrastructure audit you're talking about may give us some guidance anyway, right? So maybe we, go ahead, Bill.
Well, there is a particular category of ordinances that I would personally be interested in looking over, and the issue stems from a recent special use permit that came to the Planning Commission, and I'm happy to save that for my report on the Planning Commission or to talk about it now with you.
Well, why don't you talk about it now?
Okay. One of the things that we call out in our climate sustainability action plan is stormwater management, anticipating greater and more severe storms. And in reviewing the application for a special use permit at the last couple of meetings, we had a public hearing and then a final decision. It once again struck me that the township defers in matters of what areas are likely to flood to FEMA with its 100-year flood maps, and to whatever amendments to that map get made on an individual case-by-case basis. Construction that happens in floodways, floodplains, the township defers to the state for its regulation of who can build in floodways and floodplains. For design of stormwater infrastructure, the township defers to the drain commissioner, to the county. That process leaves the township basically accepting whatever the traditional or maybe revised version of a 100-year flood is. And deferring to the state in cases where somebody wants to actually build in a regulated area, and then defers to the drain commissioner once somebody tries to move stormwater off their property. So it's tricky. How does a township, right, go up against the feds with their definition of what's a 100-year flood? But what it means is when an application comes to the township and we say, well, the residents come to a planning commission hearing and say, we don't believe that that's a 1% because we've seen 3 of them and we've only been here for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And if our default position is the FEMA 100-year flood map, then our hands are, we tie our own hands. And I'm not clear that we can have any more authority than that unless we get creative and think about ways to either disincentivize or to create buffers, additional buffers to a regulated, you know, I don't know what the right solution to that is, but it's not easy. So if we want to dig into a really thorny, multi-jurisdictional kind of issue, this one is kind of perfect for us. But if we want to take on something that maybe is a little bit more manageable as a first bite at revising an ordinance, maybe that would be a better strategy.
Do you think it would be worth just having a meeting with our subcommittee, meeting with a group from planning and just say, hey, we're thinking about these issues. What do you think? I mean, I hate to say that. I feel like I'm always saying this, like, this is what we did in East Lansing, but that's what we did in East Lansing. And it worked really well. And we were able to get things moved along because, like what Leroy was saying, they're kind of the people who are enforcing and working with the end users of whatever it is. We all have great ideas, but some of them are a little more whimsical than others. And it might not make a lot of sense to chase those. And if we're talking directly with planning, we'll know right away.
Rose, I think that's an excellent suggestion. You know, the sustainability building group or whatever it's called. Yeah, I think we should put that on the next meeting agenda to sit down with somebody from the planning department and just kind of chat, get some ideas. Anything else you would like to get out of this, Leroy?
I just don't want to lose sight of there can be things happening simultaneously. For example, we talked about the parking requirement for charging stations, electric car charging, and there's a 75-foot amendment. There's stuff happening, and so maybe we can look at the big picture, but we can also sort of keep pace with small improvements that could happen rather than wait for a full-blown environmental review of our code of ordinances. So
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And Leroy, this green infrastructure audit, when might that happen?
we'll be working on that later this evening.
Oh, okay.
No, just kidding.
So it could be soon, this evening.
I can check with Cliff Walls with the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, and it's just a matter of kind of sitting down with him and with staff. Could probably happen over the next, maybe we could make some progress between now and the next meeting.
Sounds good. Yeah, let's, I mean, since you've suggested that's kind of a logical one of the first steps, we should probably see if we can get that moving. And it sounds like another next step is to reconvene the Sustainability Planning Building Committee, you know, and have somebody from planning join the group. Any other thoughts? Okay, seeing none, we're into our, well, let's see. Oh, chair's report. I don't have anything to say. Staff report.
I sent a paper copy of this along to people. So I'm gonna, in the sake of time and hoping to finish this meeting by daylight, I'm just gonna throw it out to you if you have any questions, or and if you didn't get a copy of my staff report and want one, you can just reach me at harvey@meridian.mi.us. But a lot of fun stuff going on, largely due to your efforts and you as a group. So thank you for making my job interesting.
Well, we're keeping you busy. That's good. Any questions for Leroy? Okay, moving on to the liaison work group reports. Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. I think that's you, Ned. I think Ned may have frozen.
That was canceled. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. We were supposed to meet June 18th, and that was canceled basically the day of or the day before, whatever. And so I have no new news to report. The last discussion, of course, was about the marathon station at the corner of Marsh Road and Hazlitt Road. And there's no new developments in that direction to talk about.
Okay, thank you, Ned. The energy team did meet. We had a discussion about the virtual solar tour in October. We talked about the RFP that's going out for the 2 solar projects, the South Fire Station and the Farmers Market. We talked about the possibility of a RFP for power purchase agreements, like we discussed at the last meeting, for other solar projects. Nothing definitive was decided, but we are continuing kind of thinking through the issues and kind of keeping up what the township's involved with. And we are, you know, the RFP is, the new RFP has gone out, and let's see, the deadline, I believe, is early August, right, Leroy?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And there's a walkthrough meeting prior to the deadline, I believe, in July 25th or sometime later in July.
Mm-hmm.
So that project is moving ahead. Let's see, Environmental Justice Study Group. Anything we should add? Okay. And,
Did we form, John,
go ahead, Susan.
did we form a study group?
You're it.
Good question.
Yeah, but I can't be a group. I'm only one.
Well, I think everybody, well, that's good. I guess what Leroy was implying is that everybody that met with Regina Strong is a study group. Although that does raise the issue whether we need a study group. And would you, either you or Ned, think that we should have further meetings, or have we kind of, at this point in time at least, I hate to say the word done enough, but we have passed the resolution and it's kind of an ongoing activity.
I do think that we should meet again as a subgroup one more time, just to kind of go back over everything that we did learn with our meeting. We wrapped up our meeting and the meeting was great and we've got nice minutes here, but we haven't kind of gone over those as a group. So I feel like it'd be worth doing it one more time at least.
We should also have in the minutes from the last meeting that we did form the study group, because it's not in the minutes.
Okay.
And so just to have it there, I agree. I did send an email to Cindy Roper of the Natural Resource Defense Council, but I haven't heard back from her. I'll ping her probably through Facebook if she doesn't respond.
Yeah, you gave her a lot of possible dates, so I would guess we will be able to have her do a green themes at some point.
Yeah. And that was related to a study that NRDC did.
If people have a chance, I really recommend reading that link, following that link. It's very interesting. NRDC is, of course, very scholarly about it.
They're very mature. And just even in terms of writing the resolution, one of the things, looking at it and just thinking even of air, I was thinking kind of in terms of the contamination. I was like, okay, well, we're in Meridian Township. But you even just think about the number of apartments along Grand River and the amount of traffic along Grand River, and therefore the amount of various different NOx, carbon monoxide, that is likely to be higher in that route and those populations that are exposed to it. I was trying to kind of think about where, as I'm writing this, is it relevant? And we may not think that it is, but it is. So I think there are issues that we can try and address and think about as things change in Meridian Township and how it affects these populations.
Well, and after the call with Regina Strong, I did kind of go through the climate sustainability plan with the idea of thinking about environmental justice. The one thing that hit me was in all 5 areas, of course, we talk about educational opportunities with respect to reaching out to township residents, which leads to the obvious conclusion that whenever we do that, we should be very sensitive to the issue of making an extra effort to kind of reach out to folks. So that's kind of an obvious thing. And sometimes when everybody's busy trying to organize an event, it kind of gets lost. But I think that's one area we could, I'm sure, of course, we probably need to do more educational activities too, and if we do, we should be kind of very sensitive to the environmental justice aspect to it. Leroy, would you take the initiative to set up a meeting for the study group? Bill?
A suggestion, brainstorming when was talking, I think if you were to correlate data that we have on traffic volumes, average daily trips, and multifamily housing in the township, it could be a bit of a wake-up call. It could be some analytical output that could kind of put some meat on the bones of what you were saying. It wouldn't be very difficult. I'm not volunteering to do it, but I'm saying it's a doable sort of bit of work.
One of the things that's always interested me, and I did my master's work on this community engagement, community empowerment, organizational development, a lot of these topics that I'm really interested in neighborhood activism are related to empowerment, and how do you help your community do things that they want to do? And we don't necessarily often talk about it, and I'm not sure we use the same philosophy or bent on life that I'm talking about when we talk about environmental justice, but it seems to me that they're very related to the concept of empowerment and community engagement. So I'll just throw that out there as an issue that interests me a lot.
Yep.
But I'll be happy to set up a meeting of the team, and if anyone wants to be on that team that's not already on it, let me know.
Okay,
I'd
thank
love
you.
to be in the loop. I can't promise to find the time, but I'll try.
Okay, let's see, moving along, Leroy, Green Team.
Kind of related to this idea of education and outreach. We've had these green networking conversations. Some of you have participated in those every week at Wednesday morning. If anybody wants to say anything about that, but it's been a good opportunity to connect with people on a sort of a less structured discussion, and we've covered a lot of ground. Some of the issues overlap with the Environmental Commission. Both Ned and Bill and have been involved.
Emma.
Yep. And so tune in if you get a chance. I can send you the link on that. But one of the issues that comes out is it actually started the formation of this group was Earth Week, and how do we get the word out about environmental opportunities for families that are stuck at home, etc. And so one ongoing challenge we have is getting stuff up on social media and using our Green Meridian page to share things like the link that Ned shared related to the study of NRDC. If you come across environmental information that you think would be relevant to our Green Meridian page, I just encourage you to share it directly on the Facebook page. If you want me to put that in the Green Gazette, I'm just throwing it out there. We really have an opportunity with 17 Facebook pages and a strong communications department to get the word out about environmental topics. So use Facebook and consider being involved with this Green Network Wednesday mornings. Bill or Ned, do you want to add anything to that? Okay, I'm done.
Okay, land preservation.
Okay, just briefly, I guess I should ask Leroy if you, in your minutes and other references, you refer to it as the LPA, it's the Land Preservation Advisory Board. We'd avoid that confusion that Ned found, or at least that was part of it.
Right.
We have not met since COVID. Emma, I see Emma is on here. We're going to meet next week. We're planning to meet in the pavilion at Central Park. I only hope that there's a mosquito treatment that's been made there, because if we're going to be meeting in the evening, Emma, I don't like mosquitoes. I think they like me a lot more than I like them. But we will be discussing, among other things, looking forward to another millage for the Land Preservation Advisory Board. And I think that's probably the main thing that we will be looking at. There are a few other things, but it's been so long. I think Emma's going to have to bring us up to date on what has been happening, as in the number of deer that were harvested and just various other things. But I don't think we need to talk about that today. I don't know if Emma, you can tell if there's anything more important that I should report on. Otherwise, it'll be reported at the next meeting.
Yeah, so, we'll bring everybody up to speed at the next meeting, but just so we're all kind of on the same page. Still trying to pump out that Meridian Conservation Corps program, which will hopefully really help with that community, development with sustainability and conservation. I really want to build up the community around that program. But mostly what we've been working on is trying to get signage out at the preserves and park. Well, really just the preserves. Because a lot of people have been using our wonderful green spaces through COVID, which has been a wonderful lifeline for them. So we're getting a lot of use. I'm getting a lot of calls. I'm having to go out and investigate a lot of invasive species and deer too. But yeah, we've had a lot of engagement through COVID, which has been wonderful. So we'll go over all that next week. And I will bring mosquito spray and I'll bring a candle. But if they ask me to spray, I think you know what my answer would be. So
Well, if I'm going to have to be there and the mosquitoes are too, I may have to override you.
Overspray you.
Overspray you, yeah.
Hey, Jim,
I'll bring the DEET spray for those who really, really can't stand them. I know they really like me too, so I feel you.
I just wonder if I should have to bring my head net and various other things to keep them away.
So
I'm not really.
I think they're much better. I've been out in the field like crazy the last 3 weeks, and they were really bad 2 weeks ago. They've gotten much, much better since then. So I think they'll be okay unless we get a big rain.
Jim, you better bring your head net. That's my
Bring
advice.
head net.
On to planning, Bill.
All right. So the Planning Commission met twice since the last Environmental Commission meeting, June 8th and June 20. Had a couple of public hearings at the June 8th meeting that then came up as unfinished business on the 22nd. The hearings that we held on the 22nd included a business in Hazlet that wants to expand to do a little bit more business on its site. No particular environmental concerns there. Provisioning center being proposed for Northwind Drive. Other than the displacement of what looks like a defunct community garden there next to the old East Lansing Food Co-op, no big deal there, and also another rezoning. There are a couple of rezonings that were considered up on Potter Street and another on Okemos Road, just changing the use designation, but no special thing proposed. The big item, public hearing on June 8th, and then came up for a decision on the 22nd, was a special use permit from the Andev Group, which is basically the third phase of the Hannah Farms development. And this is senior living at the east end of Hannah Boulevard. Hannah Boulevard would be extended, and then a cul-de-sac installed. The three parts of the development: one would be assisted living, one would be independent living, and one would be memory care. The assisted living and memory care go in first, and then the independent living later. This is an area that does see a lot of water. There are wetlands on the site. One of them is too small to be regulated, and that'll be filled. And they've avoided the other wetlands with their plans, so there will be no need for a wetland use permit. So it didn't come to the Environmental Commission. There is a second piece of it. They also need a special use permit for a building 25,000 square feet or greater. That's a township board decision, so a recommendation from the Planning Commission has gone to the township board, and it'll come up on probably their next agenda. This was the project that I mentioned earlier that caused me to dive in and think more about who regulates what parts. And there's a good chance that the summary I gave earlier is incorrect in some important respects. So I appreciate the suggestion to ask the planning department to give us a more authoritative version of how wetlands, stormwater are regulated within the township, and so that we might intelligently think about how if we want to propose something to make us, to improve our ability to adapt and mitigate to climate change in terms of stormwater management.
Bill, can you clarify just the siting there? Is that cul-de-sac and the building going to actually be on the east side of the drain, or is it going to be still on the west side of the drain?
You'll cross the bridge that crosses the two parts of the drain.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do, the road will turn left northwards toward the river. And the development will then happen on the east side of that road. So we'll go up to a cul-de-sac, and then there'll be an emergency entrance on that cul-de-sac because they need a way in and out. And that was largely to reassure the residents of Indian Lakes that the stub street that runs into that property from the east would not be activated. They won't see traffic coming between this development and Indian Lakes. Those residents are nevertheless very concerned that the prior two phases of Hannah Farms development, in their view, contributed to high water levels that they have seen in the since that development began. Obviously, that's a very difficult assertion to prove definitively. But what one of the conditions that was placed on the special use permit that was granted by the Planning Commission was that the applicant make available to the homeowners association of Indian Lakes the final calculations that they do on that drive the engineering of their stormwater systems. So normally those would simply go to the drain commissioner, and if they are approved by the drain commissioner, then they would be accepted by the planning commission. In this instance, the applicant has agreed to share that information also with the homeowners association, so they have a chance to see what's being presented to the drain commissioner. And hypothetically, if they found fault with that, they could take that up at the level of the drain commission.
I just remember there was a significant amount of re-engineering of the drain and creation of a sort of a bigger holding pond there, and engineering of water flow. This had to be, what is it? I don't know, Jim, what was it? 12 years ago, 15 years ago? It was quite a long time.
I actually got Susan's PowerPoint on that issue.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. Susan has spent a lot of time analyzing how bad it got.
I actually brought that up during the public hearing, and the applicant is an LLC that's been created for this project. And they have no knowledge of any problem that any other prior applicant might have had with their construction.
Well, I think along the way, we should just require them to build a bridge across the river, and then the bicycle trail will also be supported.
Yeah. Yeah, that occurred to me, but I did not raise that issue.
Or at least to, broaden the current, railroad tracks to include pedestrian and bike paths.
The argument I made is that one of the criteria for a special use permit is that the site, there are many, but one of them is that the site is adequately served by public infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, stormwater. And my assertion was that the public comment we heard asserted that the area was not currently adequately served by stormwater management. Again, that's the flip side of the same argument that's very difficult to make. Is there actually more flooding in Indian Lakes than there used to be, than there would have been in the absence of some development? These are not simple questions.
The challenge is there's been so much development in there. I mean, in the last 7, 8 years, I mean, that went from almost no development in that middle, well, let's see, it would be the southern side of Hyde Boulevard, to almost contiguous development from the lodges all the way to Hagedorn.
Yeah,
And-
So it's almost all impervious, right?
And it's almost all impervious. I mean, it's gonna change. I mean, it's gotta change the stormwater flow. It's gotta change the quantity, it's gotta change the quality.
One of the residents also pointed out in their public comment that the drain that comes from Meridian Mall enters the river at roughly that same location from the north. So you have some of the largest impervious surfaces in the township that are all converging on the river at roughly that same point. So trying to pin contributions from one to the other. And I would note that if we're looking at ordinances, another way to get at this rather than how you deal with the stormwater once it's in a drain is how to keep it out of the drain. They would have been allowed by right to put 75% impervious on this project. And they're only proposing 55%. So they're way under the township's maximum impervious regulation. Which tells me that we have a regulation that was very far from relevant in this particular case. I don't know if it is in other cases, but that may be another area to look into the code to see, is that something that we can are interested in, able to weigh in on.
Is there any way to know how far this property is likely to back up the river in high water times, as in up to Indian Hills and my backyard?
Well, it's all the same river,
Just
right?
a little bit of a personal interest.
It's all the same river. Your problem, Jim, is that when they replace the Okemos Bridge, right, that's acting as a dam. So it's not going to hold as much water upstream from you, and you're going to get more in your backyard.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The
You
Catalpa
got to get out there with your kayak, Jim, and your chainsaw. That's
I don't know what the chainsaw will do, but the canoe may be useful.
Anything else, Bill, or is that's it? Okay, moving on to Sustainable Development Study Group. Rose, do you have anything you would like to add?
Well, I feel like we kind of covered a lot of this earlier, so no.
Okay, thanks. And on to transportation.
So due to the intemperate remarks of myself, the Transportation Commission did meet and got a really nice update on the township road program, and also heard a little bit about MDOT plans to resurface M43, and in fact my pet project of pedestrian crossings apparently was the first one brought up in a meeting with MDOT. The one I'm particularly, some folks are mainly concerned about Meyer and McDonald's. They're on Granite Route between Okemos and Marsh because there's a lot of mid-block crossing there with the grocery carts. Mine is at Campus View Apartments, just east of the railroad overpass, where the bus lets the Campus Hill apartment dwellers off with no crossing for until you go all the way back to Hagedorn. I'm sorry, to Park Lake.
yeah, Parkway.
It sounds like there is some possibility that those mid-block crossings will get addressed in the M43 project. I'm happy about that.
It's also where Bill and I play Frogger whenever we come to Environmental Commission meetings. From campus.
Okay, I think our tree team.
Who's gonna do that, Leroy? You?
I can give a brief update, and then if you want to add anything. But basically, we had a nice meeting with a few extra people, and Michelle Belasker had submitted a proposal to assist us with the tree distribution this later this summer, and we're tweaking her proposal a little bit, hoping to give out quite a few trees through the farmers market and have a booth. We'll be looking for some volunteers to help give out information on trees. And we're also hoping too that the project with the schools will be underway as well. Jim or Emma or Bill, Rose, anybody else want to add anything? Tom?
Yes, I do. In the interest of breaking news, yes, I know Rose was interested in this. This is hot. You can either spread it or you can just hold it secret. I was instructed after our last meeting to contact people about getting Meridian as a Tree City USA. So I pointed to you, Rose. And until this evening, I had forgotten to call Kevin Sayers. So between our tree meeting and this meeting, I called Kevin, talked to him at his in-laws' cottage up at Frankfurt. He was willing to talk to me and explain to me that yes, we probably would have very little trouble with most, let's say at least 3 of the requirements for Tree City USA, and he would be very supportive. And incidentally, he's the guy in the state who has to send it to the feds. So we've got a beautiful shot, but there has to be an ordinance that relates to, and I believe we have some ordinances, but there has to be an ordinance that relates to township or city owned property. There was a township down in the Detroit area that finally said, we're not gonna mess with it. You're gonna give us all this, we're not gonna mess with it because we don't own any property. And it sounds like, and I'm not sure if our parks and land preserve or township owned property, as in the town hall and etc. We'll have to work on that and see what our current ordinance does relate to. So Leroy, you're going to have to dig that out and get it so that we can see what the ordinance does and if it will satisfy the people in Nebraska that will make it. But I'm just so pleased to report that I came up with the information. A little bit late, but in time to make it here.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anything else before we go to public remarks? Okay, any further public remarks? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Okay, we got 2 seconds. Good. Okay, all in favor of adjourning? Okay, I think we got it. Hey, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Nice job, John.